Hey, how are you? Good. Welcome back. How's everything going after coming back from the new year? I know. Well, every time I say that, I imagine like a Larry David. Do you know who that is? I don't know if you've seen his clip about that the statute of limitations runs out to say Happy New Year very quickly into the new year. So hopefully I have not passed that. Maybe I have. But no, and we'll go through our one-on-one. But I wanted to talk about performance reviews because we have those coming up and include that as well. Yeah, sure. We can talk about that first. Well, I wanted to ask and answer completely candidly always, but has anyone ever walked you through the performance review process and how to prepare for your performance review? Because I know it's your first time going through that here. No, no, I think that is most people's experience, likely for their whole career. Like, here's the review, do it, and you just try to figure it out. No, but I think it's important to talk to teams and explain more about the performance review process because this is your job, your career, and I just think it's helpful to know what goes into it and what you can actually do to prepare. Yeah, well, I've talked to HR, and we are going to have a session in a team meeting talking about the mechanics or whatever you want to call it about our reviews and everything that's required. But overall, I think some things that are helpful to know as an employee, and this applies here, but honestly, in any role, in things I guess I wish I'd known earlier in my career, but is thinking about the performance review and what to do to prepare for it, what to do in advance as an employee, and then also how it happens in things that can come up really naturally. Yes, well, first of all, I hope you will find in our review that nothing will be a surprise. You haven't even been here quite a full year, but nothing that we'll talk about in the review, and I haven't done my reviews yet, so like not done, but it's always important to me that we've talked about anything. Sometimes you may not find that with every manager, but nothing should ever be a surprise. But as an employee, some things that are helpful is, first of all, a lot of people going into performance reviews from an employee, you just think to yourself, like, why do I need to do a self-review? Like, why is that important? Because that is part of our review here, and it is part in a lot of organizations. And overall, with performance reviews and it being a point in time, I probably have a lot of thoughts about that I won't get into in this call, but generally, when you're thinking about your review, I do think a self-review can be helpful because it's your opportunity to remind anyone, me, any manager, the things that you've done, how you've developed. And I also think it can be helpful for you. As I put my self-review together, because I have to do that, I'm also an employee, I think about the things that I've worked on and how I'm different. And so sometimes it's helpful for me as well to go through that. I know probably not everybody likes to think through that like I do, but generally, some things that are helpful are wondering that, like, why do I need to do this? Shouldn't my manager know this already? Well, you've probably seen plenty of times. I'm not perfect and I don't have a perfect memory. And so you can't always assume that I or any manager is going to remember everything that you've worked on. I try. And so I have in our one-on-one notes, I try to keep track of projects, and I have ways of taking notes through the year to keep track of what you're doing, what the impact is, that feedback you've gotten. But I might not remember everything, and I also might not hear things. So one of the things I think to start with is to go through the entire review period. So for you, literally since you started. And so to think through what are some of the most important or most frequent tasks that you do or projects that you've worked on. Yeah, for the whole thing. So anything that you've done. So thinking about those, and then what the impact has been, what the role has been, like what your role has been on that. And so what can be helpful in both for me as your manager, but also just so you understand, and HR will talk about this, is there's a whole, like, what do I call it, like compensation philosophy and structure. And so the decisions, it's not just me who decides how much everybody get paid. I wish I could wave my wand and do that. But it involves like finance in particular, and we'll talk about that. But as I'm making the best case for each of my team members, it can be really helpful to show the impact that we're having to the business and that you're having to the business. And so thinking about these projects and being specific. So, yep. So like that project, for example, like what would you say? And you don't, like, we're just talking through this. You don't have to, you can think more. But yeah. Right. Oh, exactly. Perfect example. So you came in and with that project, which was already in existence, so something that can be helpful, like that you can say, I joined an existing project that had been, oh God, was that like 7 months underway at that point in time, and joined, and within the first month made suggestions. Yes, that ended up, yes, that shortened some of our negotiations. Yes, by whatever, yeah, like by that time period, like 2 weeks, we got to resolution. Like that were things that drove it across. And then anytime you can have some of that more quantifiable data, like dollars, time periods, that can be helpful. Like everything won't have that, but when you do, it's important to be really specific so you're highlighting the business impact. Again, these are things that are important for performance review. As you think about your career, and as you think about jobs internally, and hopefully just internally, but even in the future, if you're ever looking at something externally, the impact that you've had, those are really important things. Please stay internal. But so yeah, so thinking about framing that, and that's important because you'll have those projects top of mind in a better way than I certainly can for the entire team. And so I'll go through it with you and talk about that. So thinking about some of those projects or tasks, just things that you've done and any of the impact that you've had. And then just also thinking about the growth that you've had. And I say for better or for worse. Like when I'm going through the preparation for my performance review, I'll think about things that I've done that, whether it's a mistake or I do it differently next time, is to be candid about that and what I learned. And so proactively, we'll go what I've learned and how I've developed. If I've already incorporated something. So for example, if I was putting someone on a new project but didn't help them make sure that they understood the cross-functional aspects of their role, like that sounds like corporate speak, but basically if someone started and I put you into a new project and didn't give you background or make those introductions so others could give you that background, then I'd say that that's a mistake and I'm working on that to do that differently next time. So some of this is like some of these development steps. So in that review, thinking about the very specific things, the impact, the development steps. And then it can even be thinking about in the future, like what are you interested in? Where might you like to see growth? That's part of our review process, is to think about career paths. And nothing's set in stone. It can be, I want to keep pursuing this, like become an expert or whatever some people may call that, whatever the terminology is. Just thinking about what, like, if there are things that you want to focus on so that we can talk about your development as well. But putting that case in the best way for yourself. Yep. And so, yeah, thinking about some of your unique value and how you can summarize that. This is not a time to be modest. This is your time to stand out and to show even in ways I may not see. So other things you may have are feedback. Like I said, sometimes I hear feedback. When I hear feedback from others, hopefully you've seen by now, I will reach out to you and tell you what others are saying about your work. Like when I've had people that have given kudos, and it's important for you to know that. Like I love seeing that. You may have gotten some too. And sometimes you may feel modest or like, okay, and move on. But putting in a performance review, it can be really helpful. So I have a folder in my email called positive emails. A lot of people have different names for it that are less corny than positive emails. But I try to put feedback or like good emails there from time to time. But that can be really helpful as well. So yeah, so thinking about everything you can do to stand out. Summarize it, but then we'll talk about it. But thinking about that in the performance review and things that you may want to work on. And then if there's something that, like if it didn't go well, how am I learning about that? What am I doing proactively? And so those are all things I think that can help you as you get ready for your performance review. Yeah, well, and then it's in the actual review. Like if there's ever feedback that you don't agree with, how do you handle that? But let's do this. Let's talk about the rest of our one-on-one because I want to talk about the near-term things you have. And we'll have our HR team where we talk about the actual performance review process. And then let's talk as well about reviews and what to do if something ever comes up that you don't agree with the feedback on, because that can happen. Stay tuned for my next manager roleplay on how to respond to feedback in the moment. And managers, if you're getting ready for performance reviews, check out my workshop linked in the description. It includes a video and a guide that gives you tips to have your team members' reviews with more confidence.